Elevation in love. Have you ever had a painting or a picture or portrait that you was trying to do and you just couldn't figure out how to get those areas in the face just right? Well, we're gonna break that down today, and we're gonna get you a little closer to where you need to be as far as structure in the face and figuring out what part goes where and the shades and all that stuff. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna break down exactly how to align the areas of the face and then go in and add those fine details. Come on, let's jump right on in. All right, check this out. Look at this handsome guy here, right? So off the back, what do we see? We see that the face is angled. We also see that the lighting comes from the top left of the head, and the gesture of the character is facing towards his right. So when we're thinking about this, we got to understand that we're not looking at an oval face anymore. We're looking at somewhat of a slightly off set of center, right? All right, so the first thing we see is the center line, which would be about here of the face, right? Now on a traditional portrait, you might catch the face at more of a front facing view, which would put the line here at the tip of the nose. But for our own purposes, we have somewhat of a awkward space. So when looking at where the eyes line up, we see the disproportion between the nose line, the left eye, and the right eye. So how do we identify exactly where to center this picture, right? How do we identify how to structure the view? First thing we're gonna do is we have to identify the shape of the head, okay? And so by identifying the shape of the head, we can then start to draw in different areas where we want things to go. So if we draw in the shape of the head, which was kind of similar to this right here, right? We kind of have a structure already of what looks center based on this shape here. The next thing we're going to do is create a shape within this oval that's then going to create the rest of this form. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and create a bigger oval just to cover the rest of the head, right? Areas that we can't see would be in this back side here. These are areas that we can't see that we know are there, right? So if we separate the head and we look at it from this aspect here, we have this top shape. And so we know that this would be just the forehead and upper head area. The next thing we want to look at is what's connected to the forehead. Well, we have our eye areas, right? And so we're trying to break this down into shapes. And with breaking this down into shapes, we want to cover as much area as we can with that shape, as long as it's fitting whatever is going on inside of the picture. So for instance, around this eye area here, right? That eye, you kind of see the bone structure underneath the eye, and this is going to create the area where the eye would go. Now, our whole thing is to just structure the face out. Find out where everything goes, right? We have a triangular shape going in here for the nose. And so we're just gonna draw in this triangular shape, right? Underneath that, we have mouth. When we get done with this, it's gonna look like a wrestler's mask. And then cheekbones, you also have a triangular shape, somewhat of a half circle triangle shape, right? And over here would be kind of a turnt triangle. Still triangle, but kind of turnt. And down here at the bottom, you have your chin area, which is like another circle, right? You have your neck area, and some of these areas are just areas that you're gonna be guessing on because you're gonna have clothes or jacket, objects in the way of the view, but you have to be able to imagine what that would look like if those areas weren't there. Like this ear here, the ear is covered by hair, but you can identify with how you imagine the ear would be falling into place if the hair wasn't there. And we'll go in closer and we'll identify things like the lips, right? Into shapes. We can go in with the eyes. And we're still using these shapes. We're still going based off of these shapes. Right? Now we're not going too far into details about a lot of the shapes that we see, because we want to challenge ourselves still, right? We want to still challenge ourselves to what's going on. So we have a triangle right there. It's a triangle there. And this is would be somewhat of a upside down teardrop area here. Okay. So we have our area marked up, right? We have a good markup of what we'd like to see this thing going. And once we get our structure into place, right, we can then move our things around. Let's move these around now, and let's see what we have. Okay. So now we're looking at somewhat of an outline of the different areas of the face that we have identified. Now, if we were just drawing based off of our imagination, we wouldn't need to do these shapes the way that we're doing now, because when looking at a real life face, sometimes there are imperfections that can't be corrected with just using regular line and patterns like that, because sometimes the ears sit higher than the eye line or something like that, or the mouth, like for instance my mouth on a typical art layout, you would say that the edge of the eyes would line up with the mouth. But you know, judging on the type of person you're looking at, you might not get the edge of the lips to line up, or you might not get the inner eye to line up even with the edge of the nose. These are just things that we pay attention to in traditional lines, where we create lines to identify height. Sometimes one eye could be higher than the other eye, you know, and so these lines may not line up. Sometimes one eye is bigger than the other. Sometimes one eyebrow sits slightly higher than the other. And so this is just getting you to understand that there are imperfections in reality, right? And we can't always draw from a style of perfection. We have to identify what stands out about a particular character or a face, and then we have to identify how it's different from the traditional styles that we've grown up learning, the basic fundamentals. So the basic fundamentals will teach you some characteristics of face lines and all of these type of things. But once you get your structure of your face together, then you can go and start crafting and figuring out where you want everything to be. Like you see like a little divot here at the top of the brow going into the forehead. Those are like small things to correct later, you know. It doesn't have to be perfect in the beginning, because in the beginning you're just drawing those lines to give you a reference point. And so as we get our reference point, we realize, okay, now we can move, now we can work. We are paying attention to things that we didn't notice before, because we're stretching our mind to think about what type of shape would fit in a particular area, right? What type of shape would fit in this ridge area where the eyes are. And this helps you along the way with shading as well. It helps you to identify exactly where your shading should be, where your highlighting and all those things should be. And this is just based on what we gather, or what our analysis is as we start tracing some of these areas in the face. Now, as you do this, when you practice this enough times, you get to a point where you don't necessarily need to trace a picture in order to get the same outcome. And I'll do an example for you. If I wanted to, I can see the structure here, and we can go through the same process that we went through before, right? We can start low. Let's get in here. We can start low here, and we can whip this all the way around. And we're just working just merely with the shape that we see of this head, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be perfect, but all you would do is identify where those shapes sit in the face. So from there we had the eyebrow and going up to the top of the head, and we noticed that it was kind of slanted, right? So in our mind, we're doing these lines, and we're putting all of these into perspective as we sketch this out, right? And then we had our eyebrow, our eye socket area, which started in somewhat of the middle of the face and went around the eye. Yep. And then we did it on this other side, same difference. We had the triangular shaped nose. And right now we're paying attention to where these shapes line up. So if the edge of this triangle shape is lining up with the edge of that pupil right there, that would be equivalent to what we have here, the space in between this area here. And we're just gonna round that up. right into the arch of the eye of the nose there, and then back down. And then we had that upside down looking triangle thing going on here. Okay. We had the lips to come out, and the lip edge of the lips lined up with the corner of the eye there, as we saw. And in this bigger scale, the bottom sag of the eye here would line up sort of with that mouth area. So we're getting to see a characteristic of this face be formed, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Like I said, we're drawing from the perspective of just identifying where the shapes are on this face. We didn't have that kind of like a shape of a triangle, sort of. It's more of a half circle than a triangle. And then we had the same thing happening on this side. And then this whole thing was a little curve in happened there, and the cheeks came out a little bit. Then we had this chin, a little boxy looking chin there. And then we had over here, we had the ear. Now, if we pull up our previous picture, let's see how close these are in reference. See there? Not bad, right? Pretty similar, pretty close. Pretty close. And this is just based off of drawing from the eye versus tracing. And so that's what I'm saying. It comes down to you being able to identify those shapes and where they align with each other. Because right now we have a pretty good outline of the two faces. One being traced and one drawn just from basically looking at the overall shape of the head. And so, like I was saying, a lot of practice of doing this, as you do this over and over and over, you will get to a point where you don't need to trace anymore, and you can just look at a reference, and you can go in and do what you need to do from that reference. But let's go ahead and continue with this. Let's take it a step further. Let's take it a step further, right? Because that's what we're here to do, right? All right. So let's go ahead and see about shading here. Let's see about some highs and some lows here. Let's change up the color slightly, just slightly, because I don't want to confuse you with the main lines here. And I'm going to drop a layer underneath my my lines here. We're going to go all the way in. We're going to pick and we're going to select let's get the main hard brush. Undo that. Do we have a brush? Okay, where's my Gemma brushes? Hard brush, there we go. It's giving me a hard time, y'all, but that's okay, because we're gonna figure it out anyway. All right, so starting out, we just want to color in the entirety of this area here, right? We're giving this a little meat to actually work around. We actually need to do this in order to see what looks natural and see where we need to add the shading, where it needs to be darker, where it needs to be lighter. All right, so we have this set. Now the first thing we want to pay attention to is what areas look darker to us about this face. The reason why I like to start off with shading the darker areas is because I want my ending effect, I want my ending result to be a lightly pleasant visual of the face. And so rather than starting with the highlights and the lighter areas, I start off with the darker side. So we'll hack away at the darker side, which would be somewhere down in that area there. And I like to design in colors, you know. I like to design in unusual colors that you wouldn't normally see. So a few things I pay attention to right off the back is the pupils in the eye, the holes of the nose, the beard, the hair, the bottom of the jawline, the eyebrows. These are all things that you can knock out very easily, very simple, without having to put too much thought into it, because it's already there. It's the darkest areas of the face, right? So these areas we can go ahead and we can go ahead and knock them out, get them out the way, and we're just gonna patch colors in. We're not working with any dark details as far as chopping away with those lines. All we're doing is adding these areas into perspective, right? So we have the chin, we have this whole hairline over here that comes up. And don't be too hard on yourself with identifying this part here, okay? You can design this part as loosely as you like. All of this is to be done without bias, right? Without bias. And that means that you just put the colors on the canvas. Don't worry about how jacked up or how perfect they're looking right now. You're just getting the reference down, right? You're just putting the shades in the areas where you see them, where your eyes naturally catch it. That's where you're going to drop those colors. I'm not worried about being perfect at the time. Perfection will come later when we're trying to get to our end result. Right now, we just want to focus on where things go. And keep that in mind. Keep it in mind. Don't talk yourself out of doing something that you see because you don't see exactly how it's going to come together, because you can judge yourself too early in the game, and you can talk yourself out of everything you're doing or everything that you could do with this work of art. And so I like to encourage you to, stay with it. Don't talk yourself out of putting lines anywhere because you're not sure exactly how it's going to turn out in the end. We're still in the beginning. This is just the beginning phases of setting the foundation for what we see. The very beginning here. All right, now that we have a darker set, if we remove those layers, we have a outline, just a basic frontier for what we see as far as dark and light, right? So this by no means is perfect, and that's what I want you all to understand and understand, is that by the end of this picture, it's going to come together and it's going to be something amazing to look at. But stick to it. Stick to it, guys. Now, what I'm going to do now is, instead of changing the color that I'm using with the paintbrush, I'm going to turn on my sensitivity mechanism that's going to allow me to press harder light to create the movement of colors. Like this area here, I don't want it to be so dark that it would look identical to the nostril, but I do see that it's darker than the high rise of the cheeks, right? So I'm just patching in that color lightly. Okay, the same difference for the under area of the eyes and the eye, in between the eyebrow and the eye up here, right? And also that little line right at the eye up here, the eyelid. So all of these areas here, we're just crafting in. No bias. No bias, remember, no bias. Slight color there, discoloration here. Right? We're breaking down every little bit of the face, and we're just trying to cover ground, trying to make sure we don't miss anything that we see here. And we're just gonna faintly place those areas into perspective. And the jawline here. This whole area back here is a little dark, so we'll press a little hard, make it dark. Right, and get a little choppy. You can get a little choppy with your strokes. All right, and if you see something that you've colored a little too dark or a little too light, it's not too late to go back and kind of correct that. Okay. And one thing we want to do is maintain the look that we're going for here by just allowing these colors to run together on each other, allowing the shades to happen where they need to happen. Okay. We got the nose here. And keep in mind, we're coloring underneath this upper layer, so there's going to be some areas of colors that you don't see until we either remove that line or we start to work on top of those lines. Right now, we're just keeping it simple, okay? We're keeping it simple. Top lip is a little darker than the bottom lip, so keep that in mind when you're doing your pictures. But sometimes the bottom lip could be darker. Just depends on the genetic makeup, you know. But the idea is you just play it how you see it. Identify those areas and pay attention to them. So we got this whole thing here, and it's like a little crease right there where the chin and the bottom of the mouth meets. And we accounted for that with these two shapes here. You see where I put the bottom of the mouth connecting to the circle for the chin? I identified those areas when I was putting in my initial line work. So just small details you got to pay attention to. Like that will bring the element of the face together in the end. Okay, let's have a look at it without the lines. See, we're getting a little closer to where we want to be, see? And there's no rush in doing this. I want you all to just take your time and see exactly what you see. Pay attention to what you see. In due time, we'll get in here and we'll start wanting to smear stuff around in a large scale, right? Using the soft brush. Right now we're with the hard brush and we're just hacking away at these colors. Trying to see what we see. Okay. Over there. That right there. I think we did pretty good. We're doing pretty good. Now I'm going to remove the lines so we can actually start to locate areas that we can't see with the lines there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the size of my brush down to where I can get to those finer areas, and I'm going to start using color selection to grab certain areas of color and certain colors in different areas so I can manipulate those colors a little deeper. Right, so I'm using Windows. I'm gonna be holding down the Alt key and it's gonna give me the eyedropper tool, and then I'm gonna click on the actual color. This is how we'll be grabbing those colors out of there. So now we're just looking at these lines. Now if you want to, you could actually do this using the top layer, or matter of fact, let's do that. Let's keep that up there, okay? And I'm gonna keep that up there, and let's go ahead and draw on top of that, okay? So for rewind purposes, let's duplicate that layer, okay? And this is just in case if I don't want to keep this, I can always go back. Now I'm gonna go on top of this red, and I'm going to structure the eye lines that I see, okay? And this is not going to be the end all be all, okay? I'm just defining these darker, smaller areas that I couldn't do with that fat brush. We're going to keep the brush moving. We're going to keep on looking at what we have. And we're watching for areas that maybe we overlooked or didn't pay a whole lot of attention to in the beginning. But for the most part, we're patching in where those light and dark areas come together, and we're just identifying exactly where these darks and lights meet together. I'm gonna color select this lighter color here and identify the nostril, small details I'm paying attention to is like this little L, this little line here that's creating a P out of the nostril. Instead of it just being a circle, I'm paying attention to small stuff like that. There's an overhang here of the nostril, and that part is getting put in there. Okay. Small details like that you want to pay attention to, because that's going to help you in the end. A lot of people, they have distinctive features to their face, and the face doesn't have to be identical, but as long as you get some of those key elements of what their face, their distinctive structure of their face looks like, people will go, oh yeah, that looks like that person, oh yeah, that looks exactly like my face, because they see certain aspects of their face that they can identify, they can identify with. So, and we just patching in, it don't have to be perfect. All we doing is identifying. We're paying attention to the height of certain areas and how certain things are playing a part in bringing a face together. Right. We had a lighter area on this nose here. Okay. And this has always been my passion to draw what I see or draw what I feel. And it helps to be able to see things in objects or faces that the normal eye wouldn't normally go and look at. How does the light shine on the edge of this mouth here? If you're looking at the line here that makes the curve, but also that little triangle there that continues the mouth at the corner, it's little details like that gets overlooked in the beginning stages of drawing portraits. And little things like that give you it helps you to identify what the face gesture is, right? It helps you identify what the facial expression is actually doing. If we don't identify the facial expression, and it's due to us missing understanding about certain areas in the face, certain muscles underneath the skin that causes the expression to even happen in the first place. So things like that causes the facial expression to come together. If we don't have that, then the face will look empty. It'll look like the expression is empty or there's something missing. So there's always something extra to pay attention to that maybe you didn't notice before, or, trying to identify exactly how does this face come together? Like, what's creating these certain structures of the face? I call it this area here. What's creating this bag look right here? Instead of just drawing this line here at the edge, at the bottom of the eye, it would be this whole area here. That whole area would be a shape, right? So this whole side here will come together as a shape. And rather than it being dark on this side, we know that it's lighter on that side. So after we get that shape, then we come in and we add the lighter area. That's why it's very important to identify those shapes in the beginning, because right there we already had that area set up for us to go in and do what we needed to do there. And it didn't take much to get the results that we wanted to get. Okay. And don't be afraid of, dropping these colors in where you see them. Don't be afraid to be very strong with your hand on getting the colors in, because you can always go back and draw on top of what you did. You can always go back and draw on top of what you did. None of this is final. Not yet. So all of what we're doing right now is just patching in those lines, those areas. We are also going to be getting rid of the red. The red is areas that we wanted to pay a whole lot of attention to, that we knew we wanted to make accents at, so once you got your different accents together, you're identifying, you're acknowledging that area by covering it up. Okay. And none of this got to be perfect. I'll keep reiterating that, because I know that some people are going to get halfway in their painting and they're going to go, I don't think I like it. It's like, hey, you haven't done enough yet to make that judgment on that. You have not done enough work yet to say you don't like it. But to say you don't like your work is somewhat equivalent to saying that you don't like yourself. But to be able to create anything is amazing, because there's a lot of people in this world that don't share these traits, that don't share the abilities that we have to create this type of art, right? There are people that wish they could do this, and what we're doing today is exercising our abilities and gifts, and we're giving it back to the world, right? Because people are going to see your work, and people will be inspired by it if we allow them to. And the only way they can be inspired by it is if we do it and we put it where people can actually see it. So, let that be the lesson to you, to do what you got to do as far as creating, being a view, right? Giving people something to see and to be inspired by. We are kind of all over the place now, and now I'm seeing ways that the skin is moving. I'm also paying attention to the pores of the skin and the direction that the skin is pulling. This is giving me a direction to drag my brush in. So it's making this S like this, a slight S curve. And that's what I'm paying attention to in here. And I'm not trying to go too hard on it, but I am structuring a little something just to identify that facial expression. Like we were saying before, that small little bit of muscle right there makes a great difference when you have that in there, as far as seeing your facial expression come to life. Because in the end, we don't want just a vacant facial expression that doesn't look like what we're looking at. We want to be able to identify this face, because your finishing product is not going to have your original picture. You're just going to be you're going to be looking at the ending result of what you did. It's all I have right here is a little cut, a little slit right here at the bottom of the nose, where the nose meets the face. we're going to do the same thing for the other side. We have a little slit, then it raises up off of the face. So once it raises up off of the face, we're no longer going to see that dark line anymore, and that's where you have to kind of see that there's a shadow being cast downward. It's not as dark as the other side here. Oh, through this pretty good. Let's see. And then also we have a slight darker area right here, the middle of the bottom of the nose. And we're gonna just faintly put that in. Right now, we're not dealing with dark, hard lines like descriptive lines. We're still smearing around these colors in a loose manner. And we're seeing what we can see. Now, some things I'm not gonna see right off of the bat, but things that you'll learn to pay attention to as time goes on. So we have the little triangle, the little dark triangle that we was talking about before. And then when the edge of the mouth comes up, it rounds off and goes back up. So there's like a little L there and it goes up. We want to pay attention to that. And I want to incorporate that in here as a craft there. Make that little L shape and then go up. And then the little mustache comes down a little bit here. Okay. And then the darkness of the lip kind of runs it both in together. Okay. And we got a little darker area here. Select that. Okay. Another dark area here, the crease of the mouth. And I'm encouraging now, again, you got to hear it. You're doing good, and I want you to continue to progress, continue to work through the layers and work through what you see, work through the different areas. If you're tired of looking at an area, then it's okay to move on. Sometimes I have to move on just to give my eye a rest, and that's why I move around the canvas so much, because after you make a change to an area, in your mind, you may think, okay, I got it. That's the shape that I was looking for. But you have to give your eyes a rest from those areas. And so once you give yourself a rest from those areas, you can go ahead and go back and look at it. And you may see something different that you didn't see before. Okay, you might think, all right, you did it right, but you go back a second later and you go, oh no, I made this slight detail off, it's a slightly off. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's why we give our eyes a rest. You move around the canvas loosely. Don't be too committed to just one spot on the canvas, and don't limit yourself. Just move around as you feel it, as you see certain things that are happening. And some would encourage you to stay in certain areas of your canvas and don't move on until you've completed certain areas. But you have to be without boundaries. Your mind has to be without boundaries if you're going to be a creator ultimately, right? I mean, we're drawing from reference, but there's also a side of you that wants to create something greater inside of your work. That creative part of you has to be boundless. And so when you're boundless, you can maneuver how you want to maneuver, and it doesn't matter how you put down the colors on on your painting, you just go for it, right? You're just going for it. And lo and behold, you will get the results that you want. The idea is that you just gotta keep working your magic, right? You have to keep on working your magic, working down through those areas. And once again, don't give up. Don't discourage yourself, and don't talk yourself out of not doing something, not trying something to see what it looks like. See, I'll make an example out of myself. If I darken this whole area out, I'll notice that, okay, since I made this very dark, it's making my nose look very skinny down in the middle here. And I can see from here that my nose has this roundness here, and it's a pretty good roundness, and it's about the same size as the eyes are. Like if I follow the arch of the eyes, I have this triple hump thing going on. And when I look over here, I don't see that happening. I kind of see this faint line here, but I don't see that hump happening. So I know that this area here has to be opened up more. And when I see stuff like that, I'm gonna go back in with a lighter brush, and I'm gonna hack away until I get that hump back in there. See? I'm just backing that darkness off. I'm lightly pressing so I can back it off. Okay? I want you all to understand that you can do the same thing with your paintings. I'm backing it all the way off, and I'm finding that hump again. Where's that hump? Okay? And I'm pretty close to where I want to be with that hump. Okay? Now, you have that hump there, slight hump there, and a hump here. And I got the hump there. I got that hump there, and a hump there. See how we did that? See, if you find something that seems out of whack or a little jacked up, just go backwards, backpedal a little bit. Don't totally throw it away. Just work it and maneuver until you feel that it looks right. You feel that it looks how you need it to look. Okay? And as far as doing, business this way, we are challenging ourselves to create as much clarity as we can about this picture, right? We're utilizing our clairvoyance when decoding what we see here, what I'm witnessing in this photograph. I'm just transferring it over. And I'm constantly moving around. I'm constantly moving. Okay. I'm not getting stuck on any areas. I'm not allowing it to stress me out. I'm just taking my time, and I'm working around the canvas piece by piece, piece by piece. And I'm seeing these structures. I'm paying attention to how the skin is pulling in certain areas. No. Another little bag area here. And although you can't fully see it just by looking at the face, you can identify it still, because there's something in the skin that's hinting at that area of muscles. And it's a lightly done thing, you know. It's a lightly done thing. It may be the slightest color or the slightest pull on a certain area that gets those muscles looking just right for that facial expression that you're trying to capture. Okay. We back up here. We have this red line that's identifying that crease there. And we really want that crease to be in there because that also adds to the characteristic, right? But we don't want to overindulge in that. So what we want to do is back off on the darker aspects of the colors and identify that line, just that small line right there. I want you all to get kind of used to identifying with certain lines in the face that you have to make known in order for things to look right or look normal. Sometimes you're going to have a picture that you're working on that doesn't portray certain areas of the face, but you know you need to give accent to so that it's noticeable. Even though you can't visually see it, you still want it to be present, just to give a depth to, you know, a certain area or what's happening in the expression. Okay. All right, we're keeping it brewing, keeping it moving. Going in with the light and the dark, working those different areas. We're still using the sensitivity brush, but it's a hard brush with the opacity turned on, right? Opacity variation is turned on. This means when we press down, it's not going to do the full amount of that brush color. It's going to give us a percentage based on how hard we push down on this pen. Ruler selecting. I got a little divot here. It's where it looks like a dimple is forming, but it's not totally there. That makes a big difference too as far as the facial expression. So to have little small stuff like that up here slightly helps out with the expression. The part of the mouth here helps out a great deal as well. In that area, right where the lips is forming. Having that lighter area to continue out, and then drop off suddenly right there at the corner of the mouth. What else we got that we can look at? Let's start on this side of the mouth. This is the area that the light seems to be coming from. And so depending on the element of light that you have in your picture, light is going to be bouncing off of different areas and creating things make things happen on your face that doesn't look natural, right? And so light is a key ingredient to having a great picture to paint on or paint from. And sometimes you just got to be careful with how you pick your reference pictures, because you want the ability to cover all of what you see without making it look weird. You know, some areas of your face, when you just draw from a 2D standpoint, it doesn't translate to your face that well. And so, you know, I could see how some would say, this doesn't really look like me, when they see some portraits of themselves. They just see themselves from one perspective that doesn't highlight certain things that the light will highlight. They can be unsatisfied with the way that the turnout happens. Now check this area out, and this is where it gets tricky, because you have to pay attention to this type of detail. So remember this lighted area of the bag of the eye that we saw? Now realize the face in this corner here, there's a piece of the face that stands out behind the eye. Now notice the eye is sitting on top of that area of the face. We have to identify that area of the face, or that area will be lost to 2D space. So when we're identifying that, we have to come in darker, and then we work our way forward to the light in order to identify that. So let's identify this eyebrow real fast. So that's the edge of the eyebrow. Then it comes in to the eyelid there. I might have gave it a little too much. Let's back it off a little bit. Okay. And then this little area here, where the eye sits on there. Okay. Now we identified the movement of that area right there. Now we're all right, and we're back at it. Had to go to a quick intermission for the baby girl. So we're identifying the edge of this eye, and we want to make sure that we have identified this area, because we don't want to lose to the detail. So we identify it, we can back it off just a slight bit. Then I'm gonna give my eye a rest on that area. I'm gonna come back into the nose. I can see some areas of the nose that I can lighten out. I can round out a little more. And that's what it takes. It takes having an eye to go back and see what areas of detail did you leave out. What did you overlook? Yeah. And the better you get at identifying those type of things, the more amazing the work will be, the better the outcome will be. When people actually see your work, they go, wow, you really did that. And you can go, yeah, I did. Thank you. Oh man, I can hear myself at a few years from now listening at these commentations and just going, I really thought I knew what I was talking about. And that's how it is in art. The more you grow, the more when you go back and you pay attention to your older work, you go, wow, I see a lot of things that I could have did differently that would have really made that picture happen. But now I know better than to do that, you know. And I have a lot of work like that where I look at it and I go, man, I left out so many elements, so many things I didn't pay attention to because I was just rushing through the painting or, you know, trying to mimic another style or something like that, and just not understanding the knowledge that person had when they created the work that I'm using as a reference. So there's different levels to art, and there's different styles and different knowledges. So when we're dealing with all of these informations, you know, we have to be able to just stick close to the truth of what our original intentions are when we're creating. Because if you don't create from the heart, you end up losing the elements of your work to a just because cause, right? And what I like to identify is that just because clause is drawn just because you're bored or you're trying to mimic a style, you're trying to learn something different, and in the process maybe you're not drawn from the heart, you know. Like right now I'm drawn from love, you know. What I'm pulling from this is self-love, and I'm admiring every bit of skin that makes up the being of my face. Right? Every little bit of my face I'm acknowledging, and I'm becoming more aware of my being. I'm acknowledging the beauty in myself. With every stroke of this pen, I'm looking at everything that makes me up. It's beautiful, right? In some areas you might say maybe I overdid it just a little bit. Like, see the nose right here, the edge of the nose comes out right where the edge of the pupil is, but right here is slightly inward of the pupil and not outward. So maybe we can take this back inward. See, little things like that you'll pay attention to. Another thing that helped me to realize that I was a little far off was the space in between the lip and the bottom of that nostril. And if I'm looking at the lip and the bottom of that nostril, I noticed that it was sitting a little too low, a little too close to the face. So now I make my adjustments, and we get a better outcome. Also, we noticed that crease that I was creating there is not existent right there, and that crease that I was creating was because of the shape that I created, right? So because I created that shape, it put in my mind that I needed to make a crease there. And you'll have that to happen to you as well. But the thing is that you identify it and you keep on working around it, right? Now, I'm still going in lightly. I'm not trying to kill the canvas. I'm just lightly pressing and nudging those colors and separating the light from the dark. All right, so this video is running kind of long, so we'll go ahead and cut it and we'll come in with a part 2. I want to encourage you to keep moving and keep doing everything that you need to do. And overall, what we want to do is challenge ourselves to define greater purpose in ourselves by working on different aspects of our face, things that stand out about us that makes us unique. We want to capture all of those things and incorporate them into our work. And we're going to work from a place of love, a place of heart, a place of understanding of who we are and what we feel at that given time. And so that's what makes art. That's what makes the story so beautiful and so unique. Okay, so continue to do what you're doing. I'll see you over in part 2, Elevation and Love.